Tony Black, Director of State Services for USA Wrestling. Thanks for joining us today for the latest segment of Moments Off the Mat presented by USA Wrestling. Today we have Justin Tritz, founder of Trackwrestling, joining us. Justin, thanks for coming on today.
No problem. It's great to be here.
Good deal. So we'll lay the groundwork a little bit. Justin, you grew up in central Wisconsin in a family of 4 boys, all of whom were successful wrestlers. How did you get started wrestling as a kid? And who are some of the people that you would credit the most with helping you in your wrestling career?
I mean, for sure, getting started is my dad. Like, I don't remember a world where I wasn't wrestling. So from as long as I have memories, I've been on a mat. He was my coach throughout grade school, along with another actually fairly as legendary coach as an elementary school coach can have. Bill Winch was the coach at Vesper Elementary, and I think he coached there. It was like 45 years, something like really, really long. He was the coach, maybe he was coaching wrestling and then coached at the grade school for like 20 some years. I know he's been involved in the sport for a very, very long time, and just recently retired, but he obviously played a huge role in my youth wrestling. But almost every kid has to go back to their parents as far as like getting them into the sport. I bet 90% of kids join through a parent, whether it be their dad or mom who participated before and gets them involved again. So mine was my dad.
Good deal. And right, what you touch on, wrestling is largely a hereditary sport in terms of how you get introduced to the sport. But talking about your youth club coach, for those that are familiar with Wisconsin wrestling, we're going to touch on Wisconsin Rapids in a bit, but who are some of those kids that came through the Vesper program that fed into the Wisconsin Wrestling or Wisconsin Rapids program?
Well, so Jim and Jerry Hamill, I mean, they were very good wrestlers. Scott Brock, all 4 of my brothers. There was a lot of other guys on our team that came through the Vesper program that were part of our, we won 4 state titles when I was in high school. And a lot of the kids on those teams were from Vesper. But anybody who knows a lot about team wrestling is you don't always have the superstars to make a good team. So we had a lot of guys that were really good, qualifying for state, placing in the state tournament, maybe don't have the accolades of, say yourself, I think, what did you have, 3 titles or 2 titles or something, but they were still very, very good wrestlers and had a huge impact on our team. And most of that Vesper program, we were the dominant. There was 8 grade schools that fed our high school program, and most of the kids would come from Vesper. So it was a very well run program back when we were involved with it.
Cool. So obviously you just touched on, some of the success that that is part of my next question. So in high school, you wrestled for legendary coach Louis Bennett's, and you already said it, right? Your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, every team you were on won the high school state tournament, high school state championship. What are some of your fondest memories of those 4 years of high school wrestling?
For sure, being coached by Louis is one of the fondest memories. Like, I've never been coached by a better coach. I mean, he was, I think we won 12 state championships out of 13 years when either I was involved or my brothers were involved. And he was the coach the whole time. He had been coaching for a long time. I mean, he understood the idea of managing a program as a CEO, not just showing single legs and double legs. I think long before that became more and more people started understanding that. Having him as a coach is something that not necessarily appreciated as much back then, but looking back on it, we were really, really blessed to have him as a coach. And then as far as just like straight up memories from high school, I mean, my sophomore year, we won every year, we won the state title. But my sophomore year, we had a team that was, we were obviously good enough to win a state title, but we were not a great team. We weren't a great team of individuals. So we had, there's 14 weights, maybe 13 weights back then. I don't even remember. but we had 3 wrestlers qualify for the state tournament on that team. And, you know, we made our state tournament run. We ended up beating Pulaski in the team sectional, who beat us earlier in the year, you know, 40 something to teens or 40 something to 20s. We ended up, obviously, you probably remember, we wrestled you guys, I think, in the state finals or the state semifinals. You had beaten us earlier in the year. You guys had, I think, like 5 guys that were in the state finals, 4 champs. We're sitting over here with 3 guys that qualified, and just through pure, like, team effort, not getting pinned, getting the major when we needed to get, you know, those little points, those kinds of things allowed that team to be successful. And those are the memories that are really, really like fun to look back on. You know, as we had some teams that did really well, you know, won titles by a significant margin, but that's in my mind not the fun stuff, right? Everybody wants the team that is going to easily win a state title, but when you're trying to figure out if you're going to win 40-10 or 50-3, that's not that exciting for anybody. So for sure, the, you know, best memories are looking back at some of those duels like that, where it was like, wow, I don't know if we're going to win this, and everybody's got to pull together and do it. And when you actually pull it off, it's even more exciting. So.
Yeah, thanks for. Obviously, I haven't forgot that 1996, right? 13 weights. Yeah, you guys beat us in the finals. Yeah, obviously, right? A lot of history that. So I tease by saying rubbing salt in the wounds, but
to go back on what we were talking about earlier, that duel, I believe it came down to heavyweight. Your memory is really good, so you would know probably better than I would. But I'm pretty sure that duel came down to heavyweight, and our heavyweight was Charlie Jochimson, who was a wrestler from Vesper. That, you know, he didn't make it to state that year. He was solid, but not like a stud, and pulled it off for us. So. Yeah.
Actually, we had 6 guys individually that qualified for state that year, and we had 2 state champs. It was the following year that, again, you guys beat us in the state finals when we had 4 champs and 1 runner-up.
See, there you go.
But yeah, no, that the big match in '96 was at 160. You guys pinned us. But and this is right, part of your older brother was out. He had injured his knee. So you guys weren't at full strength. We were missing our 135 pounder. They probably would have wrestled had that been the case. So it was. Was it
Pettit? Was it Pettit?
No, it was Nat Forrester. So okay. Yeah, Pettit was at 140. But yeah, obviously a lot of memories, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
and we're both smiling. See, fond memories.
Say that again.
And we're both smiling. So fond memories.
Yeah, you can't see my blood pressure though. I still get. No, I'm kidding. Right, because I know the 103 pounder for us lost in overtime. So, and I see that person in the mirror every morning. So I know how it all played out.
Yeah.
But all right, so enough about high school. So after high school, you went to UW La Crosse. Ironically enough, that's where Rich Bender, the executive director for USA Wrestling, went as well. So you went there for your undergrad, then you went to UW Madison for your graduate work in computer science. It was there, I believe, that you started track wrestling. What was the prompt to do that, to start track wrestling?
So what started it all was sitting at the high school state tournament in Wisconsin, watching kids who should have been wrestling in the finals, wrestling in the quarterfinals, and wishing that the WIA would seed that tournament. So the obvious matches that should be finals matches would happen in the finals. And I was a computer science, I was in computer science classes, had the ability to program, thought that it would be smart for someone to come up with a objective way of coming up with criteria and saying, this is how we're going to seed it. And so everybody knew going into the season, this is what the criteria is going to be to seed the state tournament. There's no surprises. You get down there, you seed it, and separate the best guys. And basically wrote a simple program to seed wrestlers using criteria. I had a really good relationship with Dave Rudrud in the bi-state. So after I developed it, I asked the bi-state if they would consider using it to seed that tournament, because they were, they're a big prominent tournament in Wisconsin, and they prided themselves on doing a good job of seeding. And he basically said, yeah, we're interested in doing that as long as you can make it to X, Y, and Z to also build the brackets. And so we're ready to run the tournament. And it was basically a snowball of things like that. People that adopted it and said, yeah, it'd be really cool if it did this. It'd be really cool if it did that. And the snowball kept growing. More people wanted to use it, which was great. And more people using it means more people have suggestions, which means the to-do list continues to grow. And eventually, you prioritize it all. You pick out the things that are going to be have the biggest impact and just keep going. And that's honestly how track wrestling started and grew and still grows that way.
That's really neat. So, I didn't know that, right? It wasn't, when you sat down, it wasn't to necessarily build a online tournament software program. It was to build an objective seeding criteria for tournaments or a specific tournament initially.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So, and here's the interesting thing. Here we are 17 years later, and the driver for why track wrestling was founded still is not in place.
I know, that is crazy. It's in my home state. The WIA office is about 15 minutes away from my house. And there's still no seating at the high school state tournament, although I think they're getting closer. A few years ago, the WIA actually proposed that it gets seated, and it got shot down by the Coaches Association. So, it's one of those, seating the state tournament is one of those, like, some people really want to do it, some people really don't want to do it, and in order to get it through all the steps that it needs in order to make it happen, it takes a lot of work from people. So I do think we're a lot closer, though. So,
yeah, well, that's ironic, right? That still hasn't gotten done. Of all of the checklist things that have, right, that you've knocked out when you're at track wrestling, that's not one. So that's kind of funny, I think.
Yeah, I'll be happy when it finally does, though.
And then it'll all make sense. No, just kidding. So. Track wrestling, right? You mentioned the bi-state being an early adopter. I know that USA Wrestling was an early adopter of track wrestling as well, being used at regionals and nationals, right? With Fargo, for example. I think that all started in like 2005. How did the relationship with USA Wrestling help expand track wrestling's business?
I mean, USA Wrestling was the first national governing body to adopt track wrestling and helped significantly get it out into the rest of the country, because up until that point, it was expanding within Wisconsin through the WIAA using it for their postseason. So it was expanding there, and then maybe some Minnesota teams come in here and there, Illinois, Iowa, whatever, and use it a little bit. But it was very Wisconsin-based at its early stages. USA Wrestling started using it, and I think hugely because of the ability to do vertical pairing, and essentially started getting out to the states through USA Wrestling. And most of the same people running USA Wrestling events are also the people running high school tournaments on the weekends, things like that. So it really helped not only expand it through USA Wrestling into states, but then also that sort of took it outside of USA Wrestling in those states. And the more people that saw it, the more people that, would use it. We rarely had people use it and then stop using it. So it was essentially exposing it to enough people, get them to use it once, and then they would continue to reuse it, and more people then are exposed, and et cetera, et cetera. So.
Yeah, right. You basically, with the structure of the regional and national tournaments, you'd have a handful of experts come, and they would become even more experts, they would become, I'm bad with my words there, they would be even more proficient in the system, and then they would go back and then train up their army of people. And right, you were able to, instead of you having to be Johnny Appleseed everywhere across the country, you had basically an army of people that would come to a tournament or a national tournament and become experts and go on home and spread the word for you.
Yeah, and my example of that is the Jeff Joneses of the world. The runs tournaments for the WWF here in Wisconsin, and he's also running high school tournaments every other weekend that he's not running WWF tournaments, right? It's those people in each state that learn to use it and use it all over for other stuff. So.
Yep. obviously, right? And you mentioned Jeff. I mean, an unbelievable workhorse, right? I mean,
Yeah,
like the amount of matches that have been paired by him is like pretty incredible.
for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So another, with that relationship with USA Wrestling, Pete Zaius has been the events director for USA Wrestling that entire time, right? And Pete's a very good friend of yours. Can you talk about how the relationship between you two developed and how, when both of you maybe had to rely on each other when it was a little uncomfortable, during a tournament or maybe contract negotiations or what? How were you guys able to develop that relationship and what does that mean?
Well, developing the relationship was pretty easy. I mean, it was so natural. We were at tournaments together because they were using Track Wrestling. Pete was, helping run the tournaments. I was helping manage the software. So we were, first of all, together all the time. And second of all, we are very similar. Pete and I have we're both really cheap. So we like to save money. We both like to hang out. Our minds work really similar. And when you're at events and hanging out with someone who you really gel with, we became really good friends. We go to Packer games, things like that outside of just work, just because we really like being around each other. And I mean, that relationship is one of the best relationships that I developed through Track Wrestling the whole time. I mean, Pete's awesome. I would go out to Colorado just to see Pete now, with no business purpose. So yeah, that and managing that relationship throughout contract negotiations, all those kinds of things, it was always done really professionally. Like, obviously, we were friends, and you have to be able to manage your friendship and business. And I honestly think both of us did that really professionally, and it worked out really well. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate Pete. It's fantastic. I could go through a long list of people that I really appreciate through the whole process.
Yeah, who are some of those, Justin?
Oh man, if I start listing them, I'll never get to the end, and I'll miss somebody. Like, I'm smart enough after doing this for almost 20 years that I can't try to do that. The people who were instrumental in helping know who they are. Like, if someone was watching this, they know that how much I appreciate them. And it's just, there's a lot of them. I mean, I don't know that I have time to make the list. And like I said, I'm sure there's too many people and I'd miss somebody. And I'd feel really bad about that.
Yeah, well, I just think in our backyard here in Colorado Springs, right, Jay Ide, right, because that's one that I work with personally. But there's 50 Jay Ides and Pete Zaiuses and Jeff Joneses around the world or around our country that you've developed those relationships with. So anybody else, as we go through the questions, anybody else that you want to highlight, feel free to do so. But I certainly understand, right, the risk of forgetting someone.
Yeah.
Cool. So another big partner of Track Wrestling is the NCAA. You guys, Track Wrestling's been providing the tournament software and the clocks for the Division 1, 2, 3 championships for the better part of a decade. Can you tell us about the first time? And I'm smiling because I think I know what you're going to answer with here, but can you tell us about the first time Track Wrestling was the software provider and the clock provider? I think the NCAAs were in St. Louis that year. Specifically, like maybe where you spent the night, or where did you spend the nights during the tournament? And then was it at that tournament? Was it the first one, or was it a follow-up NCAA tournament where you had a computer? I'll let you tell the story about a computer with a sign on it.
Sure. So first of all, the story that I think you're after here has never been told in public. There's some people that have heard the story behind the scenes, but if someone from the NCAA watches this interview, it would be the first time that they heard or know about this. So, but I have moved on from track, so probably can tell the story. So it was our first year managing the NCAAs. So not a ton of experience in that, what was going on there. And the truth is, the first year we managed the NCAAs, I had never even been to the NCAAs. That was my first experience with that too. So I booked a hotel room, and when I booked the hotel room, going back to what I talked about with Pete, I'm fairly cheap, so I wasn't staying in the NCAA hotel right next to the venue or anything like that. It was a little ways away. And so anyways, I booked the hotel room, and there's a lot of hotels that are filled during NCAAs. So they said, we can get you in, but you're going to have to move to a new room on Friday night. Friday before Saturday's championships. So stayed in the same room up until Friday. The morning we left the hotel, I went to the front desk and asked them if we would be able to move rooms then, because I knew that night after wrestling got over, we were going to have to do a switch over, which takes some time, go grab some something to eat, maybe a beer, and then get back. It was going to be late when we got back. Of course, when I go to ask if we can move rooms then, they say no because of the original reason, and I'm sure that room was occupied at the time or whatever. They couldn't move rooms. They said, just, we'll have to do it when you get back. So I'm like, fine. So we leave the hotel, go run the tournament that day, do the switchover like we talked about, probably get done with the switchover at 11:30, something like that. We're hungry, go grab dinner, grab a beer, drive back to the hotel. It's probably, I don't know, 1:30 in the morning when we're getting back to the hotel. And I go to the front desk to ask him if we can do the switch. And the guy's like, oh, I got to get logged into the system. Tries to log in the system. Nothing. Can't get into the system. So he's like, oh, we're going to have to reboot the system or something like that. It's going to take a little bit. So he's, sure, goes to reboot the system. Meanwhile, Calvin is my, one of our business partners, one of my friends. Anyways, he's sleeping on the couch in the lobby waiting for us to be able to get into our room. And the system reboots. The guy goes to log into it, can't get into it again. And he basically can't check us into a hotel room unless he can log into a system. He gives me a spiel about, it's not such a great hotel. We, whatever, maybe you shouldn't have booked it is basically what he's telling me. So I'm like, okay, we've got to figure something out. I don't want to sleep on the couch in the lobby of the hotel next to Calvin. So I wake Calvin up, and the only place that I can think of that's like a quick, simple way to get some sleep before we got to go run the tournament is to drive back to the venue. We had a enclosed trailer with some cots in it, so we got the cots out, laid them down in the trailer in the same clothes that we wore to run the tournament that day. The door on the trailer wouldn't close because it closes from the outside with a latch. So we had a ratchet strap inside the trailer. We ratchet strapped the door shut from inside, got some sleep, woke up the next day, again, the same clothes, thinking, what the heck, obviously we need a shower, we got to get changed, get ready to go in and actually run this tournament. So we go into the venue with pulling our suitcases behind us, hoping the NCAA doesn't see us since it's our first impression. Talk to some security guard or something, ask them if we can get into a shower. They get us into a shower, get our clothes changed, come out on the floor. Nobody is the wiser to what actually happened, and we run the tournament. So it was definitely an eventful way to have our first year of the NCAA championships.
That's like a welcome to the majors, huh?
Yeah.
and just so you know, the legend is that it was more than one night, but I'm glad you set the record straight.
Yeah, it wasn't more than one night. No, it was just that one night. It was out of necessity. We had to sleep somewhere.
Yep.
We could have looked for a hotel. We could try to find another one, but then you'd be wasting time. And honestly, most of the hotels are booked anyway. So.
Yep. Any fun stories about any computers at the NCAAs, for example?
Yeah. So the other one that was interesting is this didn't actually cause any issues at the tournament, but it was definitely a scary moment. It was when we were getting ready to start the NCAAs in Des Moines, and I'm pretty sure it was Des Moines. And if anybody's ever been in the NCAAs, first of all, it's the best event you can possibly attend in the country. Like, it is unbelievable from like a presentation perspective, the noise, the crowd, the excitement. It's really, really cool. So right before they get it started, they are trying to jazz up the fans, trying to get everyone going. And there's, at the head table, you can feel the buzz. Like every year, even up to the last year I was managing the NCAAs, that countdown to getting the tournament going is really intense, because, you know, before those whistles blow and you're wondering, making sure if everything is going to work like it's supposed to, it's a little scary. So anyways, I'm standing up at the head table, looking around at all the equipment, trying to make sure that it's all still functioning right, there's no issues. And we have a server that runs and basically houses all the data. Everything that goes on from a data perspective at the NCAAs, score clocks, mat side scoring, ribbon boards, whatever, gets data from our server. And where we had the server set up, probably wasn't the best spot to set it up, first of all. It was like one row ahead of us where I was sitting. And someone from the NCAA staff, they were, you know, getting excited or something, and it must have been in his way. And he just closed the lid so he could see over the top of it. And I look over and think, oh my God, like all of the connections that are made to that computer are now going to be unavailable. So this was about, I don't know, 3 minutes before the start time. So I was on the second level of tables. I jumped over the table to the row below to bring the computer back up, scrambled to make sure everything was still talking. And when it started 3 minutes later, everything was fine. But it was a very intense moment. Oh,
Was there like a sign or anything telling the person maybe not to close the computer?
yeah, well, there was a sign on it that says "Don't touch," but he wasn't paying attention to that. I'm sure whatever he was focused on, that wasn't part of it. He wasn't checking out and reading the signs before that. So
yeah, wow, you probably still wake up with nightmares.
After that though, the server always came up and sat right next to me. So
yeah, fool me once, right? But
yep.
Not twice. Well, cool. So track wrestling, in its first year, I think you guys ran 38 events. In the last year, ran over 10,000. Right, slight contrast. When you sit back and look at the growth and success of track wrestling, what are you most proud of, Justin?
No, without question, it was our ability to adapt and innovate. The product that was available when we ran those 35 tournaments was nowhere near the product that was available when we ran 10,000. And all of those things were, like, all of the innovations that happened was adapting to whatever the environment was. You know, we were constantly trying to figure out what's the next best thing. And we were able to do that. So we adapted and innovated, and that's for sure the thing that I'm most proud of, and what allowed it to really grow to run 10,000 after running 35.
Yeah, that's cool. So as I ask this, I'm not going to be shocked if you like wrote your own system to track this or something, but did you ever total or tally the amount of flights, the amount of miles driven, the amount of miles flown? The one you probably don't want to keep track of is the night spent in a hotel or in the back of a trailer, I guess. But I mean, is that stuff that have you ever tallied that to know?
I never tallied it, and honestly, I never even did the flight miles. Like, it's one of those things, looking back, I probably should have done, because I would have gotten a few free flights, I'm thinking. But at the time, when you're prioritizing all of the things that have to get done, that was not one of the things on my list of like, hey, I have to get that done. If I wanted to fly somewhere, I figured I would just pay for it. So I never took the time to actually keep track of, mileage or anything like that. But I'm sure I put on a lot. I'm sure there was a lot of flights and a lot of driving over the course of 15, 18 years, whatever it was. So
yeah, lots of miles on the Ford Explorer or on the Saturn or who knows what, right?
Yeah. Yep. We went through a few vehicles. all of our trips we did a lot more driving at the end than we did flying because of all the equipment we had to haul. So there was a lot when the NCAAs were out in New York, we drove from Wisconsin Rapids to New York with a truck and trailer, put, staff, all that stuff. So yeah, we did a lot more driving at the end.
So last month, Justin, you left track wrestling to focus fully with Edge Sports Technology, which people might know it as TW Clocks. That company you founded with Calvin Elgersma, who you referenced to earlier, sleeping on the couch. What were the drivers in the decision to leave track wrestling? The company that you founded.
I mean, probably the simplest way that I can put it that would be easy to understand is there's just different types of people. It's like a house cat and a outdoor cat, right? Like house cat gets be like if you're an employee and you get consistency, you have consistent temperature, you have consistent food, you have all those kinds of things, which is nice. But you never get to go out and chase a mouse. And I'm the kind of person, I'm the outdoor cat. Like I enjoyed my time with NBC. It was the right decision. It was the necessary decision to move track wrestling over to a larger company like that. But in that process, I was forced to come inside, and I missed chasing the mouse. So I was excited to get back outside and do those kinds of things, have the adventure, have the excitement, be your own boss, all the kinds of things that go with being outside. And that was the driver. There was nothing wrong with NBC or any of the people or the environment, or I shouldn't say the environment because it didn't fit me, but yeah, I just needed to get back outside. It's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, great analogy, right? As I think you make it make sense to people that most people in the world, to use your analogy, are house cats. So if you're a barn cat or an outside cat, right?
Yeah, and honestly, if you take an outside cat and you bring it in the house, it's probably not going to go that great either. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So with Edge Sports Technology, I'm not going to ask you to reveal any trade secrets with upcoming products, but what are some of the innovations that you guys have implemented to advance the sport of wrestling?
Well, the first big one spurred the name, and that was when we developed score clocks and integrated them with the Track Wrestling live scoring software. Up until that point, if you were live scoring and needed to run the clock, you had two people at the table, one person running the scoring, one person running the clock. The times weren't always in sync. And essentially we needed to develop, or we saw a need to develop score clock integration so that you only needed one person. And that was the first big thing that TW Clocks did. And at the time there was too much going on with also running the electronics business of developing score clocks or building score clocks and selling them. So we helped start that business, but then spun it off sort of as a separate thing from the software business. And then after we developed the score clocks, we decided that we wanted to have a way to notify officials that the time was out, as opposed to having a tapper run out and tap someone. So we developed the vibrating watches that people may or may not see them on officials, but they're definitely becoming more and more popular. They usually wear them under their wristbands, their green and red wristbands, so maybe you don't even see them, you just see a little bit of a bulge there. But essentially, it's a vibration to the official rather than needing a tapper. And then also when we got into video streaming and needed to make it easy for someone running a tournament to be able to stream their own events, we needed to give them a kit of things in order to stream: a camera, a video capture device, a computer, a box for it, all the cables, all that stuff. So essentially we put together video kits that could be available for anybody that wanted to stream events. So those were the three main products that we put together and sell through TW Clocks or Edge Sports Technology now. But there's another one coming soon that will be on the level of Score Clocks. Which is obviously part of the excitement of, that mouse that I was chasing is, I wanted to go out and develop another tool that I think is going to have a big impact. So that's going to be pretty fun. Hope that will be available this fall. We're working on finishing some stuff, but at some point here, we're going to make an announcement and have it available if we can get back to wrestling tournaments.
Yeah, right. Well, the wrestling community will be right waiting for that announcement. So as a entrepreneur, business owner, CEO, right, all of the, what I would say is your adulthood or your livelihood and profession, your work ethic, for those that have interacted with Justin, are fully aware of his work ethic, right? Early on, the answering the phone and your work ethic probably rubbed off on Trina too, because she answered many phone calls, nights and weekends. I mean, and I can't imagine the amount of time that you spent coding. Where am I going with this? I guess my question, Justin, is who or what would you credit with instilling that work ethic in you?
Well, I mean, it starts with growing up on a farm. There's, and even as a kid, I didn't really like it. Like there was a lot of times where I'm working on a Saturday, working on a Sunday, working after school, thinking about my friends that get to go home from school and play, and do whatever. And as a kid, that's not always fun to think about, but that's for sure where the work ethic starts, right? Like understanding that you have to work for what you get, and you have to put the time in. But wrestling was more of a instilled my work ethic more than even the farm. And that's probably why I believe wrestling is such an important piece in anyone's life, that anyone that's wrestled has gone through something that other people just don't experience. And I don't mean to say that in a way that like diminishes any other sports or any other experiences, but I've referenced my own experiences in wrestling so many times in my life in order to try and be successful, that I've firmly believe that it makes a huge difference in someone's psyche and the way they approach life. So, I mean, wrestling played a huge impact in instilling that work ethic, and it played a huge impact on that work ethic that I needed in order to make track wrestling successful and basically succeed at anything.
Good deal. So, right, you get to sit on your blue chair and answer this question. Imagine for a second that you could make one change to wrestling at the high school level and one change to wrestling at the international level. What would those changes be?
Well, for sure, the change at the high school level would be getting a weight class back in the middle and removing one from the top. I think that we did a huge disservice to wrestling when we took a weight class out from the middle and put it in the top, and based solely on the bell curve of the number of wrestlers that would fill those spots. I don't mean to diminish anything going on at the top end of wrestling, but there's just not as many kids up there. I mean, I don't know what data was used to drive that decision, but I think that was not a good one. So I would love to see a weight class get added back to the middle where you have most of your kids and most of your competitive kids. As far as international goes, I mean, international wrestling has come so far since they went away from the 3-period results. Like, honestly, the 3-period results stuff, for anybody that doesn't remember, was, I mean, a lot of times came down to who got the right draw out of a bag of balls. I mean, it wasn't very much fun to watch. As if you cared about wrestlers, you were constantly mad because they lost because of chance rather than skill. Though the changes that they made to international wrestling actually took it from something that I love wrestling. I still like watching it, but from a fan perspective, wasn't very good, to something now where I think it's great. The change I would make, and I don't even know how you'd change it, but the scoring is still not objective enough. Like, there's still too many situations where, as a fan, for sure, you don't necessarily understand what was scored when, this guy was offensive, that guy wasn't, did he stop his motion, did, whatever. And clearly, based on the fact that they have to go to video review all the time in order to resolve these things, it's not that obvious. So I would like to see a way to clean that kind of stuff up. But I mean, they've come so far that it's hard to criticize, because they've done a lot of really good things. Hopefully they continue to make improvements. I'm guessing other people feel the same way as far as the understanding of the scoring, and who knows, hopefully they're working on it, but I don't know that you can fix it that easy either.
Yeah, I don't know, right? It's not a control sport like folk style, so neither freestyle nor Greco, right? And it offers a lot of, unfortunately, subjectivity, right? So it's more difficult to give a black and white answer that will hold true over every situation.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
I do love the fact that they're on their feet a lot, though. I love the fact that they call stalling really quickly, or not stalling, stalemate really quickly, bring them back up. Like, the excitement level in freestyle wrestling now at the International is fantastic.
Yeah, there's certainly action. That's good. So very personal question, or a personal question. I don't know how personal. So you're a wrestling dad now, and you have been for a handful of years. What have you found to be the most challenging and most rewarding about the role of a wrestling dad / coach?
I mean, the balance of dad and coach it's the easy answer, and it's 100% the true answer. If you're all the dads out there that coach understand that it's a challenge, and I'm sure kids in the room with dads as a coach also think that that's a challenge, because I mean, when you're a kid, your parents don't know anything. Like, you go through life, you finally start to figure out that your parents know something. When you start becoming an adult and you realize, hey, I need to get some advice from someone who I know and trust, and you got to go to mom and dad. Up until then, your parents don't know anything. Even like Jordan Burroughs' kid will probably question his dad's advice at some point. So there's definitely trying to find that line between being a dad, being a coach, managing the fact that your kids in the practice room are not going to behave the same as other kids in the practice room, because they're your kids. They're going to behave differently, and trying to figure out what that balance is, and managing it is for sure the biggest challenge. And the most rewarding thing is when you're coaching anyone, whether it's your own kid or other kids, and they win a match that you didn't expect them to win. They really dig deep. They find that like next gear, and they find a way to win a match, or even not get pinned, or something in a match where they really, really got to grit it out, and when they get done, they're really proud of themselves. Those moments are fantastic. I mean, that's really the best part of coaching.
Yeah, cool. Taking pride when you see others prideful, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So last question for you, Justin. And this is probably a really open-ended question, but as you sit back, what has wrestling done for your life?
I mean, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I mean, it instilled the work ethic in me that allowed me to approach a challenge throughout life, whatever it was, and understand that if I just work hard, I can accomplish what I want to accomplish. And it allows you to, it teaches you how to put that work in. It allows you to compare that work to some other work that you're going to have to put in to succeed at something else. And for me, it is honestly instrumental in life, and to the point where I believe all kids should wrestle. Like, obviously that's pretty extreme, but like when you just take what can be learned from wrestling, and like with my own kids, it's like going to school for me. It's like, hey, you might not want to go to school, but it's really good for you. You have to go to school. You might not like it, but it's like part of life. Or you don't like eating vegetables, you got to eat vegetables. Like, I really believe wrestling does so many good things for developing character and, you know, the kinds of stuff that people need to succeed in life, that I feel like it's really important. And it's probably why, you know, after putting a lifetime into it and seeing what comes out of it, I just really believe it's that important.
Yeah, well said. Right. I think most people that go through the sport of wrestling would agree that, right, that those values instilled by the sport are very difficult to instill otherwise, but are so important. So, yeah, right. America needs more wrestlers, not less. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's not like you can't get the things that you get out of wrestling from other places, but it's the most efficient way to get those things. Like, you got to go to quite a few different places to get the same things out of what you can get out of wrestling.
Yep. That very, very true. So, well, Justin, I certainly appreciate you joining us, you know, on this latest segment of Moments Off the Mat. Anything else that you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think that's good. I really appreciate you having me on and get a chance to talk about some of the old memories and things like that. That's always fun. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, great. Well, you have a great rest of the day. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks a lot, Tony.